Thank you, everyone. I'm really happy to be here. Thanks, Mark and Todd, for organizing this. I am one of the co-founders of I-90. We are a minority-owned business consultancy here in the Triangle. And the work that we do at high level, we do facilitation, we do training, and we do technology. I'm a techie at heart. And part of the work that we realize with our clients is that there are very specific situations as they think about their strategy 3 years, 5 years, that could be augmented by AI. And I want to share with you in 5 minutes one of those use cases. We're working with a nonprofit in Chatham County, the Hispanic Liaison. And as you know, there's a lot of challenges that nonprofits are facing now with their funding. And we are deploying a very small, very targeted use case to help them out with that. So the way that I-90 works is that we will partner with our clients and think through which are the areas where we'll create the most impact and that you could reduce the challenges you're having, either through automation or in this case through AI. These are the 4 areas that for this client particularly would be very beneficial. I think we can extrapolate in general and think for a lot of nonprofits and for a lot of small businesses, identifying opportunities and really highlighting which are the ones that are best for us. It's one of them. The actual process of writing the draft and getting that with the appropriate language and getting it with the correct terminology and hitting all the parts that the donor is looking for is also important. The revision of that pre-submission and of course that feedback loop of what is good and what it isn't. The part that we, through our practice, realize is that some parts might be very critical and important, but you have to start solving mainly for the biggest pain points that you have and the ones that would create the least amount of work or training necessary to get started. When we started doing the initial work with AI, the models changed and things were a little bit different, so you have to be able to invest the least amount of time possible to be able to generate the most amount of work. So the way that we went about it with this client is to look at these 4 areas that they do need help with and choose which is the one that we can get implemented today that can get you moving and that can get your organization getting some funding and moving forward. So we decided to go for the writing part. It may not be the most critical, maybe for some folks thinking, how do I create my funnel and identify the opportunities is more important. But in terms of quick wins and how do we move forward faster, writing the grants and getting some applications out seemed very critical for them. So the initial work was not with AI yet. It was conversations and interviews with the client where we identified what were the categories that they were trying to apply for, which were the very specific grants that they were trying to go after, and then select previous applications. This part will be for you if you were today earlier and you saw what Mark did with training the tool and giving context and providing information. It was selecting the good quality input. So with our clients, it was selecting the grants that they won to start with, which are the big wins for you guys. Then the ones that had the language that you use for those type of applications that are relevant as examples. The ones that maybe have really good language, but you didn't win, but you still are very proud of the way you put together that application. And finally, the ones that you were not selected, but feedback was given, and you can learn from that. So we created all this repository of information with the client to categorize what is the right quality of information that we want to provide to ChatGPT. The work now that we did with ChatGPT was first to use the area of projects that you've seen to capture all that data and have ChatGPT learn what is the critical information, how does the organization talk about themselves, what are the metrics that they use, what are the results that they produce in a very structured way. The goal was to train the tool to mimic the writing style of the organization. By going through those successes, ChatGPT was able to reproduce close enough. This is not perfect. If we want to quantify it, let's say 60 to 80% quality of result in training the tool and replicate the language. The next part was training the tool to actually write the application itself and know which are the areas that, as a ChatGPT, I'm going to complete for the organization, and which are the areas that I'm going to prompt the grant writer to write the content and provide the necessary information so the document will be completed. Finally, was just creating the GPT itself, moving from project into GPT for two reasons. Prompt the user to upload the application, so ChatGPT could create the markdown document, create the format, and have it ready to be populated. Write the initial draft and key the grant writer into what is the input that I am not going to guess or estimate, but I need verbatim from you to be able to put it on the application and generate that first draft. So from a process that would typically take this organization about a week, executive directors, grant writers are really busy. They're trying to juggle multiple occupations, and that's what it will take. It turned into just an afternoon exercise. And they're currently using it, sending the applications. We don't have the feedback yet in terms of win rate, but from sending one application a week, we're cutting down for them to have the 10 that they're focusing on. They sit down, executive director, grant writer, in an afternoon, and they get them all ready to go. And that's the exercise that our client is going through. So the lesson learned from this, what are the benefits and considerations as we think about using AI for a process like this? Speed, of course, much faster. Instead of trying to work remotely on coordinate times with your executives, you can actually have in a very short period of time go over the important part, which is reviewing the outcome and how good the application is, and give chance for rewriting. The language itself, being able more concise, the tool, it's able to pick up what the donor is looking for and the type of language that the foundation or the donor is expecting, so it's able to match it, especially with the latest models from ChatGPT. The quality of picking out the language of the donor with the language that the client wants to use is also very good. The two big considerations for us, it's the human part, the human experience, it's critical. And we're not replacing anyone. We're giving the experts time to not have to type, write, research, find the good application they wrote last year to bring it forward. It actually does it for them really, really quickly, and there's consistency on the language. The tool also picks for which donor different language and tone is being used, depending on the type of applications that they're writing for. So that's clearly a benefit, but it's the constant reminder that the skills that these organizations have, that human factor, is even more critical now, because they're not spending time typing, but actually assessing the quality of the application and making the necessary changes. And the other consideration that it takes a little bit of time in back and forth with the tool, it's maintaining the organizational voice. You don't want your application to be robotic. You don't want the application to sound like it's being written by ChatGPT. So that's the biggest challenge for a lot of these organizations, because they have their own ethos, their own language, their own culture that they want to represent as they write these grants. It has taken them sometimes decades to fine-tune the way that they write. So the iterative part in being able to quickly produce the outcome, the draft, hand it over to the grant writer to provide feedback for the tool. What we're doing is we're capturing that feedback on the phone, and we have ChatGPT we talk to ChatGPT basically. It summarizes everything and is providing that loop to go back for the retraining. So there's also not much effort from the grant writer who's got a very limited time. If anyone here works in nonprofits, you guys know how expensive grant writers are and how much of a luxury is having their time to provide that feedback. So that part of gathering the voice, it's that loop in the feedback that we're able to capture. So in under a little 5 minutes, this is the use case, this is the example that we're trying to put together. Instead of adding another person to produce a role, instead of having to hire and train, what we're doing is elevating the quality of the work that the grant writer is doing. In this phase one is getting this application faster so the nonprofit can get some income coming in. And at a phase two, we're gonna go back to opportunity identification and start working with them on how do you train ChatGPT to identify the right grants, the ones that fit them, the ones that they have a higher win probability, create that funnel so the writing can also be much faster. So that is a phase two that is coming up with a client. But at this point, we're happy with the result. And it's been a very quick presentation. I hope this is useful to you guys. That's my contact information. That's my LinkedIn. I'll be here all day tomorrow if you want to go into details on how this happened. I'll be more than happy to chat with you all. Thank you.